Hello, and welcome to the Denver Urbanism Podcast, a podcast on all things city and train building in the glorious city of Denver. Hey, Andy.
Hi.
Would you like to go on a field trip with me?
I'd love to go on a field trip with you. Where are we going?
We're going to Ward Station.
Fabulous.
Welcome aboard on TV, Commuter Rail. This is the G line to Leeds Bridge, Ward Station.
All right, Andy, where are we?
We are at Ward Station.
And just looking around, describe to the listeners what you see right now.
It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful morning. The mountains are close and covered in snow. You can see the foothills. You can see both North and South Table from here. We're pretty close to Golden, Colorado. As the bird flies, there's a lot of new townhomes being built all around us. There's a brand new apartment building called The Parallel. In every direction, it just looks like they're basically getting ready to transform the next lot and the next commercial site and the next rail yard into another parcel of housing. But the train doesn't go any further than this. You can see just in the distance the sort of end of RTD's electrified rail line. Just maybe 300, 400 feet that way.
And you mentioned that we're surrounded by a number of new apartments, townhomes. Do you know, prior to the G-Line's opening a number of years ago, what was here? Were these planned? What was going on here?
I remember in 2019 getting dropped off here after coming up to Arvada to work. It was all just warehouses and commercial sites and vacant lots. None of this was here. You know, you can see there's still some warehouses here. It's not like they're in bad condition. This isn't run down. But clearly there's a more valuable use for the space now than just storage for scrap metal and spare parts.
So what I'm hearing is that this rail has changed this area, has made this area a desirable place to live, but this would not have been a desirable place for a rail, all else equal.
I assume that if all of the houses that are here now were here in 2019, everybody in the whole community would have said that this was a slam dunk placement to put a station. But that's not how RTD works.
Right. It's like stations beget communities that make the stations a slam dunk placement.
And you can see people that have clearly gotten dropped off here that are, waiting to take a bus to the next place, or, it looks like a lot of folks coming to or from the airport maybe that, got off at Union Station and changed to the G line. Build something and people will use it. But considering it's a Sunday, it's a game day, there's not that many people that were using the train when we got off.
Right.
I hope in the next 15 minutes that many, many more people get on at beautiful Ward Station.
And one wonders how many more people we'd see in Avalanche jerseys riding by on the train if there were a connection to Golden. If they were able to get into the city, how many people would be taking that, avoiding drunk driving trips, avoiding the emissions with our beautiful train here, rather than Ward Station. All right. Any last thoughts before we head back to the podcast studio?
I'm really interested to see in the next 5 to 10 years, regardless of the ability to expand the G line, how much better Ward Station gets connected by multimodal infrastructure, more bus lanes, other forms of getting people to this station, which can become constantly more useful as new development happens. I would keep my eyes peeled for that. How does this station become more and more and more useful?
Yeah, totally. I'm excited to see that too. Well, let's head back on the train and get back to the podcast studio. Wow, what a fun field trip we just went on. But the question remains, why were we at Ward Station, of all places?
Because that's where the train goes. And the train goes there because there already were train tracks to use. RTD acquired those train tracks in the early 2000s and built what they believed to be the first step towards getting a train to Golden. There's actually two different trains, both of which took their first steps towards being trains to Golden. That's historical, actually. There used to be several interurban railways that you could take from Denver to Golden, because both of those are old towns. Probably 70 years ago, Ward Station was just a farm. There weren't people around. There weren't the industrial facilities nearby, the subdivisions, the new apartment buildings going up. The reason that you build rail from one place to the next is because there's people and demand already there. People want to go from Denver to Golden. They used to do it regularly. There's a charming little video that we'll link in the show note that shows like a film recording from the 1940s of somebody taking what would now be the W Line's right of way out from Denver, Colorado to Golden, Colorado. There were trains that already did this. The rail line and the right of way already existed. So they used what they had, but they haven't gone all the way yet.
Yeah, and I totally recommend you check out that video. It's really charming and a delightful look into the trolley days gone by. And another thing you can do if you're interested is if you go onto Google Maps and you look up Perry Station and go all the way back in the Google Street View from 2007, you can see along the gulch at Perry Station the old rail line that RTD would eventually turn into the W line. And to your point, both the W line and the G line were rails that ended in Golden, places where people wanted to be, places where people wanted to go, or people from Golden wanted to connect into Denver. And if you ride the W line now, if you ride the G line now, you can't get into Golden, frankly. If you ride the W all the way to the terminus, you end up at Jeffco Government Center, and that is not an easy connection into the heart of Golden, where you really want to be. If you ride the G line all the way to the end, like we were just at Ward Station, there's nothing really there either. So if the whole point is to connect people from places they want to be to places they want to go, why does the G line end at Ward Station? Why does the W line end at Jeffco Government Center?
Well, it's not NIMBYs, as we know from wonderful reporting by Nate Miner at CPR. I think that's the first thing I heard when we started looking into this question was, well, people didn't like it. People didn't want it. Actually, RTD has been asking questions of voters, asking questions of policymakers for the last 50-odd years about, well, what if we did personal rapid transportation? What if we had a subway downtown? What if we did a really extensive rail network? Okay, what if we pared it back? This is what got approved. The first step, the first stage is what we have approved. Does that mean that that first step, the W only going as far as Federal Center being double-tracked, and then it's single-tracked past then to get to the Taj Mahal, as people call it. Does that mean that that is the end of that project forever? No. That's why we should be out there and asking questions, because we shouldn't just accept what we have as the end-all, be-all, nothing can change. Change is good and productive sometimes. And to get people refocused on the fact that you're so close to Golden in both places, and that Golden is a place people want to go. It's really fun. There's lots of stuff to do there. I like the Windy Saddle, for instance. It's a coffee shop downtown in Golden. I go there fairly often with my partner and his family. But we can't take the train there, even though 70, 80 years ago, people took the train from Denver into Golden and got off at Washington Street, downtown Golden.
Yeah. And to that point, the G line, RTD owns the right-of-way, fully built out tracks from Union Station into downtown Golden. Now, you would have to do some electrification, and you would have to do some reconfiguring to make sure that the RTD commuter rail cars could get into Golden, but the right-of-way is there. And so to your point, yes, it's kind of depressing that Ward Station is, as it is today, the terminus, and that Jeffco Government Center, as great as a location that is not downtown Golden. It's not the end. Let's get an RTD perspective in here, shall we?
Yeah, this is the director for the Northwest sort of portion that includes Arvada, Ian Harwick.
Ian, thanks so much for coming on the Denver Urbanism Podcast. If you don't mind, could you introduce yourself to our listeners? Who are you, and what's your relationship with the G Line?
Sure. Thanks for having me, James. My name is Ian Harwick. I am the RTD Director for District L, which represents Arvada and Southwest Adams County. I moved to Arvada in 1988 and lived there until I went to college, and then moved back about 6 years ago in 2018. I started serving as a director last year in January of 2023.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to talk to me for a sec. And I guess starting off, in your own words, why do we do transit in the first place? What's the promise? And specifically, why are we interested in linking towns and cities together?
Sure. I mean, for me, transit is the great common denominator, as our GM and CEO loves to say. And it's the best way to move people efficiently, effectively, cost effectively. And for me, the hub and spoke model that is RTD's rail system is this, when done well, is a perfect opportunity to move people from different communities, connect them along the way, and then also obviously into the downtown core, downtown Denver.
Yeah, awesome. And on that point, the G Line specifically, how have you seen it transform a community you call home, Arvada? And if you can, also just how is that community you've seen influenced by and interconnected with Denver? How's that changing Arvada?
So, funnily enough, that's a word. When my parents moved to a community called Rainbow Ridge, which is it's in Arvada, but just barely, which is near 52nd and Ward. And the other day, I hadn't been out there in a while, and we were out at the Ward Road station. My wife was picking me up from the G Line, and I just saw how much development had come up around there. There's an amazing new apartment complex there with retail at the bottom. I didn't have a chance to stop in there, but I'm really excited to go check it out. But really just saw just one area that for the longest time was commercial and industrial, which is still there. But now we're bringing in a whole lot of activity for people that are living there. And now we're giving them the opportunity to walk or bike or roll and not just take a car to that. At the Ridge Station, there's a lot of apartments that were already there when it came around and now are better connected to it. I've seen the Red Rocks campus over there just really begin to expand its footprint and really grow into itself. I remember when it was just like a singular building 20 years ago, and now it's become a very robust, rocking campus, which is great to see.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds amazing. On the flip side of that, what are some barriers you see with the G Line, with connectivity in Arvada and to Denver and to the surrounding area?
So, the G Line is, don't get me wrong, it's amazing. It's fantastic. It's just a gem to have in the community. But outside of the G Line, we have minimal bus service that runs through Arvada, and it's mainly on the east side of town, really leaving the west side lacking for abilities to move internally in the community and then also move to other communities, whether that's going to Boulder or to Golden, Westminster, Wheat Ridge, or Denver. I mean, Denver's the easy one. They can still do that. But the other four, not so much. And so I'm quite aware of that lack and the community's desire to be better connected with other options that aren't just being able to drive in your car.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. On this podcast today, we're talking a lot about the potential for G Line to continue into Golden, or for the W to continue on into Golden. And there are a lot of fast tracks projects that RTD is supposed to complete. There's a lack of dollars there, which puts people like you who are making some of these decisions in a really tough place. The L line could be expanded to 30th and Blake. Of course, there's the B line to Boulder and Longmont. There's the N line expansion. If you were to rank something like the G line expansion to Golden, where would you rank that in terms of dollars per value?
With this in mind, we have to sort of remove BNSF from the conversation because they right now we own the line into Golden, but they have the rights to operate their vehicles on it. So if we were not having a conversation about them and just talking about our ability to use the line, which again is ours, to me, this one makes a ton of sense. Assuming that we had the ability to use the line tomorrow, it makes a lot of sense because we do own it. And it really, is a great connect. It like leads you right into, to downtown Golden, and truly then connects Golden to Arvada, to Southwest Adams County, to Denver. And it just would be pretty fantastic for all communities. And I think economic development would really flow. Also, unincorporated Jeffco would probably get a line at McIntyre, which to me would be also a great asset for people to live in Arvada and give them easier access to either one, get to Golden or to downtown Denver, or Old Town for that matter. A lot of people feel disconnected from that part of the community, and this would be a great way to give them easier access to it. And there's been a lot of talk about like an on-demand shuttle similar to what we have in Montbello or in Globeville and Elyria, Swansea. And if Arvada were to pursue that, and with an extension, you'd be able to give everyone in West Arvada really amazing access to all of the local shopping centers or our various rail lines, and in that instance, the hypothetical new one at McIntyre.
Yeah, that's awesome. One last question for you. What other projects do you feel could transform the area? I know Arvada is near and dear to your heart, and so when you think about a transit project or a transportation project to connect places, what's something that you think could be really transformative?
Besides an on-demand shuttle, there's been talk about the governor wanting to pursue a line from Union Station to Steamboat and Craig, which would be a beautiful, awesome trip. But one of the cool things is they have spoken about putting in a stop in Arvada near 93 and Highway 72. And to me, if that were to go through and then we looked at a future G-line extension, West Arvada would go from being in a transit desert to being in a transit-rich environment. And as so many of our community members are aging, the combination of these three together, to me, make for a great opportunity for them to continue to age in place, have safe connectivity to go out and do the activities that they are interested in pursuing. But this wouldn't just be for aging adults, it would be for everyone, and giving a really catalyst project and providing service, something that really has never been a conversation until last year, which is, to me, very exciting.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And hopefully we get to see it happen. I really appreciate you taking some time and chatting with me today. And hopefully we can have you on the Denver Urbanism podcast again soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks a lot, James.
So we have the rights of way. What would it take to actually get the G line down into Golden?
Money, commitment, policy, stakeholders who say yes at every step along the way. I think right now, at a high level in Colorado, everybody knows that the governor really wants the B line to happen and go to Boulder. I think a lot of regular people do too. It's not just the governor.
Right.
But it helps when the governor's the person saying it. If the next governor were from Golden, for instance, and said, hey, there are 2 rail lines within like 6-7 miles of downtown Golden, could one of them or maybe both of them come to downtown Golden? If that person was out there really talking about it all the time, I think we would probably put a plan together to get the rail into downtown Golden. I'll say realistically, I think the W is a more practical, short-term goal to get into downtown Golden, just because I think, obviously it's very expensive to build new right-of-way, but one thing that is being missed, and I appreciate you mentioning it, there is a lot of work that has to be done to prepare the existing right-of-way between Ward Station and essentially the Coors Brewery and, Coors Tech. That part of downtown Golden is where that rail goes. There's a lot of work that has to be done to prepare that. And that's not cheap work. And actually, the single track section that ends at Jeffco Government Center is really close. And you just have to follow a state highway a little further down the road to get basically to downtown Golden. So it's a shorter distance for the W line. We already are in some way comfortable with the single track being what we have for now and all we're going to kind of use for now. And it's along not rail right of way, but right of way that could be used in a better and more efficient way. If I can share a personal anecdote for a second, I feel that I am one of the few people that ever benefited from the W line's current configuration in a regular way.
Interesting.
I lived for a little while, basically in downtown Denver. And I used to catch the W from Auraria West to go all the way out to Jefferson County Government Center and my boyfriend, now my fiance, lived just across that little bridge. Of all the places in the world for me to want to date somebody, it actually was pretty convenient to take the W line to get there the whole way. And for a little while, I actually lived with him in Golden and took the W line in to get to work every day in downtown Denver. It goes somewhere, but if you are him, for instance, and he was living on the outskirts of Golden and you want to get down into the city, you want to get into downtown, the Windy Saddle, you want to get a coffee shop job, if you want to go to school at the School of Mines, if you have any other reason to go deeper or closer into the town that gives rise to all of the other demand that is nearby and all the other housing, the W line isn't your way.
And, you touched on something interesting there, which is that transit connections, no matter where they are to or from, benefit people, right? I've been on of buses before where I'm the only person on the bus and we're going out to some random suburb somewhere. And I think to myself, well, this line really shouldn't be running. But then I think, wait a minute, I'm using this line right now. And so, absolutely, Jeffco Government Center, if you are going to the government center for a court, say, that is an extremely useful line. If you are living right by there and you need to get into Denver, it's an extremely useful line. Transit connections matter no matter where they're to or from. And transit connections, stops along bus or particularly rail lines, spur development. We just saw at Ward Station, there's development happening there. Would that have happened if the rail hadn't been there in the first place? Almost definitely not, right? The transformation of Old Town Arvada from kind of, in my view, a not great place to hang out. I had gone a couple times prior to the rail landing there in 2019. I didn't enjoy it too much, and now I love to go. I take people to Old Town Arvada when they visit town. And so rail, again, no matter where it's going, or in the intermediary stops along the way to a destination, can be transformative to a place. But it's also important when we are developing that since we have limited dollars, that we can't just splay lines out to any old suburb. As we build these lines, of course, rail is an indispensable amenity for these intermediary stops, but destinations truly matter. Whether you're the governor talking about going to Boulder, or whether you're us right now talking about going to Golden.
I'll also just insert that there are people who can't drive. There are people who don't drive, don't want to drive. There are times, for instance, after you've gone to the ophthalmologist, when it is not proper for you to be driving, or after you've had a rousing time in downtown Denver and you want to get back to Golden. There are appropriate moments, regular moments, when somebody does not want to, cannot drive, and should not drive. And transit is a very useful way to get someplace without driving. It's cheaper than calling a cab. In fact, it's cheaper now in the year 2024 than it was in 2023 to go to Golden. If I was taking that same trip more regularly, I would be saving more money now than I was back then. So the person and the need is still there. There are car trips happening right now from the W line's terminus to the actual place that people want to go. Get people closer to the place they want to go and cut carbon emissions. This is like a real thing too.
Yeah, and the roadblocks that are in front of us are real. They're not impossible to overcome. The W line, right in front of where the W line terminates right now, there's a big hill. There is a golf course on the other side of that hill that I'm sure golfers would not be super happy if there was construction and perhaps a narrowing of where they got to play golf. The G line has BNSF rail there that is perpetually operating as freight, and it is not electrified. There are issues, but as Ken mentioned last time on our podcast, we often are in a position of weighing values against one another, right? Here we have the values of time, energy, money versus the specific connection to Golden. And maybe the governor's right. Maybe those dollars should be put toward connecting to Boulder. Maybe that's a better use of the money, extending the B line out. And the B line does exist. It goes, 2 stops? But connecting the B line all the way out to Boulder. And as long as we are talking about this in terms of weighing those values properly, I think we can make some really intelligent decisions about how we extend our transit access. The G line, to me seems like a slam dunk. If you're talking about the value add per dollar, we're talking about so much more economic activity in Old Town Arvada. We're talking about so much more economic activity in downtown Denver. And we're talking about the developments at Ward Station becoming primo places to live. Maybe you aren't in the best place at Ward Station, but what you have access to, barely anyone else in the state would have access to 3 pretty amazing places to go and visit.
I think maybe this is a weird take. We shouldn't say, why doesn't it go? Let's, like, the frame should be, when will this happen?
Yeah.
Not because we're asking this because we don't actually know that the answer is that they don't have a plan and it's not going to happen anytime soon. But, like, it is a slam dunk, as you're saying. Trips are already being made from the terminus just a little further down the way. Uber trips, or cart rides, walks and bike rides. It's that close.
Right. Yeah. And one other thing, we have already decided as a society that we are going to make this investment between cities. We've just made it for one mode of transit, for people who can afford a car, for people who are able to get a license, for people who are not disabled. We've already decided we're going to build a huge highway between these 2 cities. So we already said that this connection is incredibly valuable. And what we're saying right here is, well, let's extend that same value proposition to something that ultimately is cheaper to maintain per person using it, ultimately is more accessible for more people, for people who have lost their licenses or can't get licenses or can't get a car. Allowing people to explore and be a part of your city, in my view, is city building. We want people to come and say, wow, Denver is incredible. I love to be here, spend my money here, spend my time here, and I want to go do that in Golden. And so since we've already made that value decision as a community with highways and roads, let's make it with rail too. Well, on that note, thanks for listening. If you're Governor Polis, hey, maybe fund the G line in addition to the B line if that's something you're thinking about doing. If you're anyone else, thanks for listening. We are now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so you can find us there. That's very exciting. I assume you're already listening on there unless you're on YouTube for some reason. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. Really appreciate the support, and stay tuned for more exciting episodes. Andy, thanks for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me, James.
We love you, Ward Station!
We love you, Ward Station. Never change. Wait, actually, no. Change completely. Change completely.